Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Get Pucked podcast. Dave, Matt, and Vito here. No Luca, unfortunately, but fortunately for him, he's actually at the preseason game that's being recorded. We're recording as that game's going on, so maybe there'll be the handful of little comments thrown in, as I'm sure all three of us have the game up on another screen somewhere. But I'm not going to let that distract. I have a couple questions I want to throw your guys' way. And before we do that, how you boys feeling? First game. See, hockey's back.
I already want the preseason to end. Let's go regular season, meaningful games. Let's go. Let's do this.
Nothing worse in the preseason. Let's move on.
Yeah. I mean, we have such PTSD from the last preseason. I guess that's really what it comes down to. But okay, let's dive in. Let's start talking. So obviously, preseason has started, like we're saying, and there's a handful of games. I think it's 2 games shorter than usual, right? I think there's 6 this year instead of 8, something like that. Okay, so we'll take that. That's good. 5 instead of 7. All right. Which means the actual season is right around the corner. Just around the corner. And so it got me thinking of all the players that are currently on the team, those that were here from the last season or 2, and those that have subsequently joined the team. I'd like to know who you think is going to be this season's biggest X factor. This is what I've been musing about. There's some obvious answers, I think, and then there's perhaps some other guys that maybe might surprise people. And so I'll start with you, Dave. Who do you got as your X factor for this season?
So to me, an X factor is like someone you can't, like, your whole kind of season depends on, right? The X factor is like it's hit or miss, and if the X factor is not there, it doesn't work. And I think this team is not built that way, really. I think you can't really, like, obviously if Nick Suzuki, underperforms, I think there's a lot of guys who, they've worked around this roster enough to be like, you could probably fit it in even if he underperforms. Obviously injuries are a whole other thing, but in terms of performance, this team is so well built that, like, your instinct is to say someone like Demidov, oh, he's going to be the X factor. But, like, at the end of the day, like, they did fine without him really all of last season. And, Patrick Laine obviously can take him to the next level if he ups his production and stuff like that. So can I say the coach? Can I?
You absolutely can. Sure.
I don't remember how you phrased it, but if you're going to ask me,
biggest X factor on the team in the upcoming season, I didn't actually specify player. I mean, obviously that's where I was going with it, but go for it. I'm going
to say the coach is the X factor.
Okay.
I think that I've spoken about it before. It's time for Marty St. Louis to step up. I need to see how he manages certain situations. I need to see how he coaches when it's time to win. And, there's a lot of question marks for me that need to be answered. And I think the season more so relies on him and his coaching than anybody else. I think Ken Hughes put a very good product on the ice. I think obviously there's a, maybe a glaring hole that you'd like to call it a 2C. But other than that, the team has improved all in all in the offseason. Everybody who was given a contract has lived up so far to that contract, whether it be Suzuki, Caulfield, Slav. Like, there's been nobody really. I think everybody has picked up their end of the boat or the couch, or however you want to phrase it. And I think that the only one left for everything to fall in place was Marty St. Louis. Marty St. Louis, when given tests last year, the goaltending test, I think he failed it. I think that he didn't handle his goaltending situation properly whatsoever. I don't think he really handled the Laine situation well either. He didn't prove to have. He gave everybody a long leash, and it seemed that, like, Laine was the one who was not getting the long leash, who arguably you can argue deserves the longest leash. I think there were question marks throughout the season on a few things and a few points there. And I think that how he's going to, if Lane Hudson has a sophomore slump, how is he going to deal with that? How is he going to react that way? Is he going to strip him of his minutes? Is he going to play him more? How is he going to manage that? How long is it going to take to get Demidov to power play 1? Lane Hudson didn't start off there last year. It didn't take very long for him to get there, but at the end of the day, you have to make those decisions. And so this is what's interesting me. And I think that the whole season, really the biggest X factor is Marty St. Louis' coaching. And if he could take the next step in his development as a head coach, because he's developing as well. So that to me is the biggest, most important, I think, question mark on this team. Because other than that, I mean, I don't think, like, again, as I said, if Suzuki takes a step back, there's other people who can step up. There's if If Demidov struggles a little bit out the gate, I think it's fine. I think you can manage it. If Laine struggles a little bit, he struggled on 5-on-5 all of last year, and they were managed to do it. Defensively, I think that they're very well rounded on that end, and even goaltending at the end of the day. Obviously Montembeault is going to play a key role here, but I think ultimately the biggest X factor, it's going to be Marty St. Louis.
It was not something I thought anybody was going to say. Again, thinking that I was talking about the players, but that is an excellent argument, and I think a very valid point that you're making, given the fact that, like you mentioned, he's growing as a coach as well. And where is he going to be now with probably the best product that this team has put out on the ice in a very long time? Will he be able to take another step with it? I think there's a lot of credibility to that being one of the biggest X factors. Excellent. Good luck following that up, Vito. Who do you got?
I'll just answer something Dave said. I don't entirely disagree with you in saying that, there's a lot of question marks there. There's a lot of things to consider. There's one thing that the Canadiens don't have the depth to, and they can't afford to have Nick Suzuki not play the best that he can, right? They can't afford for him not to come up and be another, less than a 75-point player in a strong two-way game. Like, they can't afford that because they don't have the depth to make up for it. He has to be literally like last year, if not better. Right.
He does need to be top notch for sure. And he definitely needs to be that number one center. And he doesn't really have anyone behind him there. I will give you that, but I do see a scenario where he doesn't, we were all hyping for him to become that point a game player going forward and stuff like that. If he continues his two-way play, but just takes a step back point production wise, there's other people who could fill those roles for me now.
Well, and now that's where I'm going to jump in. There's like three players for me that could really be difference makers for this Montreal Canadiens team, and that could really take them to another. I know you asked for one, but it's because they're gonna. Montreal plays a team game. It's not so much like it's one guy. It's not like Tampa Bay's got Kucherov or Kaprizov and those guys that can literally give you 100 points and say, okay, that's your X factor, that's your go-to player.
Well, just because you're the most points on the team, I don't necessarily know if that makes you the X factor. But I'll reserve my right to tell you why I feel that way after. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think that in order for Montreal to really take the next step, and it's going to be three players that I'm going to really rely on this year, and one of them is Slafkovsky is going to have to, in my opinion, find his game and go to the next level. I'm not saying he's got to be a 90-point player, but he's got to play that physical style, that unicorn style game that they drafted him for. Use his body, create the space, not have such a slow start, be consistent as much as possible. Be physical, front net presence, take that shot because he's got a very powerful shot. Hopefully he worked on his release in the summer. We saw a few clips that he was doing that. That's number one. Number two, Arbor Jackeye. That guy is a guy that is in the best shape that we've seen him. And I've always said it from the day that this guy hit the NHL. He has the ability and the style of game, and that he could actually change the course of a game with his physicality, and he just needed to work on his foot speed a little bit, some of his decision making, and taking less penalties. When I saw this guy, I always thought he could be a modern day physical, tough Dan Girardi-esque type of guy, and which is extremely serviceable to a team on the back end. I'm not saying he's going to be like a first pairing guy. He's not that kind of guy, but he can play an impact and change the course of a game with his presence, with his type of game, with his shot sometimes, just, doing the right things, sticking up for his team. The other player that is not spoken about enough, and he's a new acquisition, you guys are probably thinking Dobson, it's Bolduc. Bolduc plays a game with a bit of an edge, has a quick release, has a great shot, and I think the Montreal Canadiens are going to depend on him quite a bit this year. And they're going to hope that he picks up where he left off in St. Louis, if not more. So this is a person that who can also change the course of a game. And those are the three guys that I think that can be X factors. Maybe not night in and night out, but over the course of an entire season, when we're going to get from the start of the season to the end, I'm hoping that we're going to look at them and say these guys had consistent great years and played a factor, and they're key players on the Montreal Canadiens roster.
I mean, I think everything you said makes perfect sense. There's no argument that those three guys, well, two in particular, and maybe one even more so with Slafkovsky, having to come out the gate, instead of being second half Slav, he's got to be, the full season. I think that's a pretty big factor. I don't know if it's the number one X factor. If you were to ask me like where I stand on it, and I'll tell you in a second. Bolduc, I he's an interesting person in a sense that you heard and were able to see snippets of what he was capable of doing in the later half of last season as well. But I don't know where his ceiling is. I don't necessarily know what the organization's expectations of him are. And if he has like a mediocre season, I don't think that's going to be the reason we're going to look back and say they either didn't succeed or they are like, I don't think he's going to play a factor. Jack Guy's an interesting one too. But the thing about him is, yeah, there's an element of physicality that he brings that maybe not so many other players on the team can do. And to your point, I think the physicality was shown in the playoffs with Washington, and that will be a sort of lingering impression that will be left on this team, knowing that as the season progresses, they're going to want to be and maintain a level of physicality. It has to be present in their play. They can't all be speed and skill. That said, he is fighting for the 6th defensive spot.
I don't think he's fighting for that spot anymore.
Even if he's not, he's 6th. Can we agree?
He is 6.
Okay.
He's 6.
So to me, if you ask, and I am asking myself, who's the X factor of the season? It's Dobson. I think Noah Dobson is probably the biggest X factor. He has come in, and he has come in to be the number one. He is the number one guy. He's expected to quarterback power plays. He's expected to shut down the best players on the opposition night in and night out. He's expected to play monster minutes. He's expected to have a big bounce back season after a down season last year. There's a lot riding on him. I would basically say that he's a foundational piece to the team to have any kind of significant levels of success. There's a lot of importance placed on this guy coming in. And that's not to take away from Lane Hudson, although I think it gives Hudson a lot of breathing room. It's not to take anything away from Caden Gooley, who is also coming into his own. I think is going to have a big season as well. But Dobson, to me, if for whatever reason he has a very poor season, I think that will be something you can look at and point and say, that is the reason why this team didn't make playoffs. That is the reason why this team didn't go far in the playoffs. What have you. That's where I think is we're going to look to say that will be a defining acquisition for this team's future in the long run if he doesn't pan out to be what we all hope that he's going to be and what we know he can be given on what he's done in the past. So I don't think any one particular thing is right around. The St. Louis thing was phenomenal. I didn't expect to talk about the coach at all, and I really think that there's a lot of to be said about that. And the guys you picked, it's not to poo-poo on your guys. It's just to say what Dave was kind of mentioning. I think if any one of those 3 guys don't meet the bar, there's enough padding around it to kind of make up for it a bit, versus where I think if Dobson doesn't meet the bar, I don't know if we have anybody on the team who could kind of make up for that. If you know
it is the best product we've seen the Montreal Canadiens have since I could even remember. But there's still a few question marks. But the thing is that there was always question marks. In previous years, we said there was question marks all over the place on the team. Now the question marks are less and less, but they're still big ones. Sure. You're still looking at what you just mentioned. How's Dobson going to work out in Montreal? How's it all going to fit and all that? On paper looks amazing to have Dobson there. Is Nick Suzuki going to hit 90 points this season? Is he going to just be a point a game player? Is he going to regress in terms of his offense? But still play a two-way game. Is Kirby Dach going to be able to come in and not be scared to get hit and maybe hit 50 to 65 points? How's Bolduc going to be? How's the fact that they lost Armia and Dvorak? How's the penalty kill in the defensive elements when apparently they're going the objective is to give Newhook some of those defensive responsibilities. Like, these are things that you can't look at last year and be like, what happened last year is a lock that the success of last year is going to lock in for this year as well. There's still some question marks, and all we can do is, Patrick Laine is playing a contract year, and apparently he's in the best shape of his life, and he's happy and all that stuff. Like, these are all these things. Like, a lot of things still have to go right.
No, for sure. But what you're basically saying is there's a lot of different, things that can either go right or wrong. And which is Monty.
Nobody's talking about that, but is Monty going to play as many games as last year with Dobish there and maybe Kakkonen? Like, we don't know.
And say Monty is your X factor. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. Of course, there's a myriad of things that you got to look at. But what would be the number one thing that you think that if it doesn't go right, that's going to be something that you look back? If many things don't go right, you'll say, Sure, there was a bunch of things. Talk didn't materialize at 2C. Line didn't come back. Hudson regressed. The Suzuki regressed. But what would be the first thing that you would say is kind of where I'm going with the question, right? That if all things went wrong, what's the number one thing that would be, wow, yeah, that's the biggest one, which ultimately would be the X factor.
You could even argue Kirby Dach is more of an X factor than anybody, sure. Because if he ends up being that 2C somehow, beating all of our thoughts and what we thought, and he comes in and he ends up being that 2C, that's a crazy X factor. You know what I mean? But if he doesn't live up to the hype, in terms of expectations, it's probably okay. Yeah, that's what we thought was going to happen, but it could end up being, a big detriment to the team.
A great X factor to the other way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, for sure. No, so, I think all good answers, and would be very curious to know in the comments what people are going to let us know about what they think is the number one X factor. Vito basically touched on everybody on the team, so it'll be curious to know who agrees with him. But let us know in the comments below. As always, we're super curious to know when people reach out and let us know in the comments whether we're right, wrong, or what they think. And to that, I want to jump to the next thing.
You want one name, Sammy Blais.
Sammy Blais X Factor? Okay. We'll get to Sammy Blais in a bit. A name that's circulating. Yeah, why? Well, you'll see. Another name that's circulating, so one that's kind of getting a little bit of traction again in the media. So Malkin, apparently, they've been talking to him. I think this is his last season on his contract. Well, the reporters went and talked to him and said, "Hey, do you want to stay here?" Like, it's the same.
Okay.
Basically,
I thought you were saying Montreal was talking to him. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Well, the reporters have asked him, what does he want to do, and does he see himself playing for another team? The exact same narrative with Crosby. The difference here is that apparently the reports have come out from certain outlets that Montreal has inquired about Malkin's availability and interest. He has a full no movement clause. So there's a little bit more to that than just a generic, hey, would you want Malkin on the team? That said, and knowing that we've had this whole long discussion about Crosby, what do you have any interest in Evgeny Malkin at this stage of his career if he were to be the one from Pittsburgh that comes to fill the 2C for the next 2 years or something? He's 39 years old. I think he had 16 goals last season. He had, I believe it was 50 or 50-something points in 60-something games. Is this something you'd even want to entertain if you had a say in the matter, or would you shy away from this and the only Penguin you have any interest in is Sidney Crosby? Start with you, Vito.
Don't get me wrong. Sidney Crosby is still the primary target. I think going to Malkin would be like, okay, no, Sidney Crosby is not ready to move, and the Montreal Canadiens want to take the next step, and the other center options across the NHL are just way too expensive to acquire, or they're just not available. Then, yeah, take a flyer on Evgeny Malkin if the cost is not too much. It's especially if it's 1 year. I feel like that he'd be like a trade deadline acquisition if Montreal's in a playoff spot. And they would, maybe they don't have to pay too much. Still something. There's still something that's going to have to go the other way. You still have Evgeny Malkin at the end of the day, and he's still productive enough. But it'd be more like I wouldn't be over the moon getting him, and I wouldn't be disappointed. I'd be like, okay, that's cool. The Montreal Canadiens got Evgeny Malkin. They addressed the 2C. Somebody who could play with Demidov, have the communication there, a big guy down the middle, something like that who's still productive enough that he's posting up solid 2C numbers. Is he the Evgeny Malkin of 100 points? No, he's not that guy. He's not even the Evgeny Malkin of 75 or 80 points anymore. But it doesn't mean he can't play hockey. He can still play. He could still produce at a very solid rate. So I think it would come down to whatever the cost would be. And as long as it's nothing too crazy, and Montreal really did try their best to get Sidney Crosby, just wasn't available, or tried their best to get any other person that's more of a long-term fixture. Right now, Evgeny Malkin is basically a UFA at the end of the season, if I'm not mistaken. So it would be just a trade deadline acquisition. And if Montreal's in a spot where they're really comfortable in a playoff position, you add typically at those times. And adding Evgeny Malkin, who's got the pedigree that he has, is not a bad move at all. Just again, I wouldn't sacrifice a crazy first for him or some of our higher end prospects like we've mentioned for somebody like Crosby for the next 2 years.
But do you a future, like beyond a trade deadline pickup to the okay. So it would be if it's going to happen, you try to get him for a run this year. Otherwise, you don't go. Okay, okay, that makes a little bit more sense than to me. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense in terms of it being a rental because at the end of the day, the target's going to be Crosby, and everybody knows that. And Evgeny Malkin's not a long term, even like for the next 5 years. Like he's 39 years old. He's had a history of shortened seasons and injuries. He was a guy who throughout his career, I always thought he'd be a great fit in Montreal. I always thought that it would, and there was whispers at it. At one point, there were whispers that they would make a move and try to bring him in, especially during the Bergevin era where he was looking for that center. There were links to it, but it never ended up materializing. It never ended up happening. And I do think I look at it now and it's like, okay, if you're going to go get him at the deadline, then that's an absolutely fantastic. The thing is, it's going to cost more. It's going to cost so much more than what anybody here is willing to pay. I could guarantee you that.
Yeah, at least a late first if they have an extra first.
Absolutely, at the very least, I think around the league you're going to find someone who's going to pay a bigger price than that.
It'll hinder a future move, is what I think would be the problem. Yeah.
Well, no, but because. So it would only hinder a future move if they plan on re-signing him in the next year. You know what I mean? And if they don't, he's a UFA at the end of the year. So to me, that's what makes sense is you get him in as a big, mid-season acquisition. He fills that 2C very, very well because it's obviously not going well if you're looking at Evgeny Malkin, and you can go from there and you kind of sell it. But other than that, for a long-term fix,
that's his decision too. I remember that. Like he's got the no trade clause and all that. So if he says I only want to go to Montreal, then it hurts the package that would go.
I don't see why he would say I only want.
No, I know. I'm just saying. I'm not saying he would.
Yeah. And also, I mean, like it's his decision in the sense that I think he's gonna want to trade. I mean, like look who's gonna be playing with. I think like it's gonna be like Mantha and like. Who's excited about that? The only thing is if they go on a little bit of a run, that's the only way I could see him wanting to stay a little bit longer. But other than
whispers last year of him linking him to Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas is becoming the new New York Rangers, where everybody's linked to Dallas for some odd reason. But yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I don't see it other than trade deadline, midseason acquisition. That's it. A rental.
Yeah, he's not somebody that I would go after for more than just going for this year. You have him and the story. Like I'm not, even though he said he may retire at the end of the year or maybe want to play one more year. I don't want the Montreal Canadiens to be that team that signs him beyond.
Because then it definitely blocks. And eventually his play is just going to fall off a little bit. And then you're stuck kind of with that same problem.
Because you could see, like, even though he's productive, if you look at his numbers, like, okay, it's tapering off. It's not like, oh my God, it's not drastic. He didn't drop from being an 80-point player, let's say, or a 75-point player and went down to 30 points. He's still productive enough where it's like, okay, you're comfortable. He's putting up the numbers that we kind of hope Kirby Dach would put. So it's like
39 years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm playing not with the greatest talent.
Yeah. Like Evgeny Malkin's still Evgeny Malkin. Let's not get it twisted.
If you don't talk last year, which was 50 and 68, he was 67 and 82, 83 and 82.
Yeah.
42 and 41 hurt, 28 and 33 hurt, 74 and 55. Now we're going back to 2019 already.
But the more you go back, the less.
He's not going to be Evgeny Malkin that's going to be able to go end to end, and you look at him and he looks like the reincarnation of Mario Lemieux. Like those days are like Evgeny Malkin are done. But his IQ is still there. He can still use his big body. Injuries are still a concern. The guy at the end of the day, I think he missed like 340 games in his career, something to that effect. He's missed a lot of games, but but for a run. To add that kind of caliber and depth and somebody who knows what it's like to get all the way to the end on more than one occasion, and for somebody to also mentor a player like Demidov where they could speak the same language and all that, there's a lot of boxes that it checks. But is he my primary target? No.
I can't see it because to me, the only way it makes sense is what you guys are suggesting, that it's a rental for a run. And while anybody would likely say that he's an upgrade on Dach at 2C if you go get him. If they're looking to bring a guy in because they're basically playoff bound and they're going to go on a run, you'd have to assume that the Dach project has been working. that it has been a good season and that they are doing well. And I don't know why you'd go out and bring in a guy to replace Doc if presumably in this hypothetical
because at
he's
a
doing
trade
well.
deadline, even if Doc is doing well, you always want to add. You always add something that takes you a bit over the top. The only question that I'm going to ask, and I'm sure there's going to be some fans that are either going to hate what I'm bringing up because the bias kicks in, or there's going to be some fans that are going to agree. You're going to get it's a polarizing statement that I think I'm going to make is that are the Montreal Canadiens a Malkin away from winning the Stanley Cup? And to me, that answer is no. You know what I mean? Malkin's not going to take them over the top where they're going to win the Stanley Cup. So if that's the case, that's why I'm not willing to pay so much. I know I said a lot about bringing in Crosby. That's very different. Crosby's still producing at an elite level, still a top 5, top 7 center in the entire league. Malkin is not anymore.
It's a huge difference between Crosby and Malkin for sure.
Less miles on him, less pain, less injury. It's totally different.
So that's why it would really depend on the cost. And I think that if the price wasn't so high, maybe Montreal would have entertained bringing in Malkin to start the season and get a full season out of him based on the rumors that are out there and that, they touched base with the Penguins. Instead, that didn't happen, probably because Kyle Dubas was asking more than Montreal was ever willing to pay for somebody like Malkin who's 39 years old.
Yeah, I can't see it personally. Dave, you're going to say something?
No, I agree. It's completely different with Crosby than it is with Malkin. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you kind of have to judge where you are come mid-season, and you see what's happening and what your weaknesses are. And maybe there is someone who stepped up at 2C, and it's not necessarily an area that you need to correct right away. You have to kind of evaluate what you're doing. But if you're lighting up the league, if everything's going well and it's running smoothly, it's not a bad idea to inquire about someone like that. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's a move you make now. And I don't think you're going to overpay. And I think that's going to hurt them because at the end of the day, I think you're going to have to overpay for Evgeny Malkin.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I don't think the timing is right for Evgeny Malkin. That's why the name stopped pretty much at there's certain teams that just reached out and wanted to see to get a feeler out there, but it never happened. So if it hasn't happened yet, I do think that he's going to be a deadline acquisition for another team or for any team really. And he's going to be a good one. I mean, there's been older players that have been acquired at the trade deadline for runs before. It's not like this is impossible just because he's 39. If he was a guy putting up 50, I mean, Joe Thornton was an acquisition. There's players that become acquisitions all the time that are of that age.
He's a more than serviceable 39-year-old, but I mean, he is noticeably slower. He is regressed as you would expect him to be. I mean, so for the right, basically, you're saying for the right price. But you think that right price is unlikely. Dave, you're basically saying the same thing. I think
it's a first.
I guess for the right price, sure, but I can't see how you're going to make that make sense.
I think if it's not Montreal paying a first, there's going to be a team that thinks that is a contender, or that they think that Evgeny Malkin might take them over the top. Heck, I could even see a team like the Leafs, for example, that when they come trade deadline, say throw everything at it, let's go for it. We gotta try. It's Evgeny Malkin at the end of the day.
It's a curious question to say the least. I don't think he's the one. I mean, if you're going to go to Pittsburgh, you're going to try to make it work with Crosby, or nothing's going to come from that. But anyways, curious to know. And as always, let us know if you would want Malkin on the team in the comments below. That's another thing that we're very interested to know. It's a hot topic right now. Very fascinating thing. Last little thing I want to talk to you guys about. Just kicking this idea around for a little bit, and I'll bring it up now just to end the episode on a little bit of a, I don't know, different note. I don't even know how to phrase what I was going to say there, but what have you. Would you ever accept if the Montreal Canadiens released an alternate third jersey that did not feature the iconic CH logo? Think something like New Jersey's jersey or something like this, Montreal, something like this. Would you ever? I don't know. I'm just to give you a concept.
They did the CA once.
No, but that was like a heritage. That was like
but still, generally, it's the logo. Imagine if they went out and played a game with a jersey that didn't feature the logo. Would you ever, no matter how cool the jersey looked, would you ever be okay with that?
I'd be okay with it if it's cool, if it looks nice. I mean, I don't think
be cool without the CH.
That's the real question, and I don't think it can. I think that if you were to do like a Montreal kind of thing with like kind of like how Pittsburgh had the letters down, or Rangers have it down, that's a thing that I could see work, but it's been done before, right? So like the Canadiens would have to put a unique spin on it and have to make it.
What about just MTL?
Well, no, I hate that. I hate the Sens. Like people who put this, not even the full team name, like it drives me absolutely crazy. Like the Hawks had one, I think it was just the Hawks. Like that's not your team name. Why is that your like? No, even if they put Habs or MTL, I don't like it, man. Like it's Montreal Canadiens. It's a brand. It's a franchise that has history, has legacy. I don't like it. I don't like those at all. I think there is a way to do it. Probably someone way smarter than me can come up with a logo or a jersey design that's much nicer. I don't think that it will happen. And I think, listen, that logo is worth so much. Yeah. You know, it's a top 5 worldwide logo in terms of sports. I think why mess with something, you know, I think their nicest jerseys were those white and blue ones that they had. It doesn't work really for the home and away these days, but the white and blue one that they had, you know, it was pretty nice. But other than that,
but it had the logo.
So it had the logo.
You could kind of mess with the color schemes, even though a lot of people took exception to the fact that it wasn't red or white, but it had the logo at the very least.
Yeah.
So yeah. Vito, would you ever be okay with it?
I'd be more open with changing the jersey style and the color tones more so than I would the logo. Leave the logo as is. I think there's a world where you can make, I don't know, black or navy blue or something different that you go, that's the alternate jersey and it's going to remain as a third jersey. And you see a lot of teams are doing that now. They keep their logos the same, but it's the colors and the way they do it. I'm not saying take the Montreal Canadiens and give them jade green or something like that, but
it's like the Leafs black Justin Bieber jersey there. Like that,
I guess something in that.
No, that's just an example of what you're saying. Like you just change the color. The only thing that would make sense.
And then like put in some other tones. Like I think there's something that can be done as not like as you know. Oh, here's a jersey for one night. Like this is our third jersey.
Like the Blackhawks had a nice one that, like, I don't know if you remember, but it was like their Blackhawks logo inside of a circle with like a cream horizontal stripe, and it was like a black jersey with a red trim. That was nice. That was a really nice jersey. They don't use it anymore, but I thought that was a good way because it still had their logo. Like there's a way you could fit the Canadiens logo, put it a little bit smaller, put it in another shape or whatnot.
Like we know it's Rouge. That's their main thing, but they could come up with a third uniform. I'm going to say it's a whole uniform that is just completely different, and people might hate it or they might love it. They might be like, okay, this is something new, it's something different, it's something fresh, but they know that it's a third jersey that maybe they're going to pop up I don't know, once a month, twice a month at most. I might get crucified for this, I might get killed in the comment section for this, but hey, it is what it is.
I don't think it's crazy.
I don't think it's crazy either.
But the logo, no, you don't touch that logo.
I would not mess with the logo.
You don't touch the shape of it?
I wouldn't mess with the structure of the jersey, which I think is unique and iconic as well, with like the bar that goes across the middle kind of thing, like the literally behind your head, Vito, like the blue trim across. Even the color, I think something about that Habs red in particular. And I know there's a whole generation that it's the white jersey that speaks more to them for the home, what have you. But I'm of the generation where the red is mine. Exactly.
This used to be the away jersey.
Yeah. So to me,
a long time ago now.
I can't see what they can do that they would ever be able to come out and it would enhance, improve, even just slightly modify and tweak so that it's, hey, this is our third. It's the perfect. I know it's biased as hell, but it's perfect iconic jersey.
You're not wrong. It is, but I think there is a world where they could introduce something more than, hey, today is some event or something. You know, like they're like the white and blue one that Dave was mentioning. I remember when that first came out.
The reverse retros, you mean?
No, not the reverse retros. It was the one where it wasn't Koivu or Kovalev still there when they wore it. It was all white with the blue around here. That one was I loved it. It was beautiful.
You're not talking about like the Winter Classic one, right? With the globe?
No, not with the globe. Hold on a second. I think I could
pop up a picture. We'll take this one offline to double check because I thought for half a second I'm like, blue. Oh, you're talking about the reverse retros?
No, it was the white one. The white one, kind of like the globe one. But it was with the kind of blue sea, like I don't know how to describe it. I mean, you'd have to put it in the We'll put it here somewhere, but
we'll find a link for it and check it out. But anyways, I think we're all in agreement. You don't mess with the iconic CH. I think bottom line, there's no world where they're going to make an alternate jersey that doesn't have the Habs logo on it.
No, the logo stays the same, but I could see a world where they, they change the color scheme, or they have a third jersey that's just slightly different or completely different, just to be, something cool. I could see something like that happening.
Well, hopefully,
but the logo has to say you don't mess with the logo.
I don't think so anywhere. And of course, as always, I mean, and like we've been saying for the other two questions, let us know in the comments below as well. Would you be okay if they ever introduced a jersey that didn't feature the iconic CH logo somewhere on the jersey? If you would be cool with that or not, that's something that I think I would be surprised if people are, to be honest with you. But anyways, let us know in the comments below. As always, if you haven't, please like, subscribe, all the rest of that stuff. We very much appreciate anybody who takes the time to listen to a bunch of fools talk about the Montreal Canadiens. So thanks as always so much for that. Hopefully we'll have Luca back next time. And aside from that, there'll be a couple preseason games between now and our next episode. Maybe some stuff will happen. We'll be sure to touch on those as well. But until then, for Dave and Vito, I'm Matt, and this was
Get Pucked.